fact, as you said, that Goldman is taking and, as you said, just raping the American citizens in the country and taking this money like this?
Let's make this clear, so I'll say it again so everyone could understand it. If the name's on Wall Street, and this isn't like ha 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 stuff, because I've heard enough mafia stories for the rest of my life. If their names were Celente, Caruso, Puccini, Rossini, Mondavi, Buitoni, they'd call it the mafia, and would be big news, entertainment galore, HBO, special prosecutors, you name it. But because it's the Merrill Lynch mob, the Goldman Sachs gang, and the guys' names are Thane and Blankfein and Paulson, they call it a different game. It's criminal activity. They're robbing us blind. And just as you have, and I said these are money junkies, they need more money. They never have enough. They never have enough. Billions and hundreds of millions in compensation. Who are they kidding? For what? For trading? For gambling? They're junkies. So what we have to understand from Secretary Paulson, it's a bait and switch. Of course he lied. Just like a junkie would lie to his loved ones. There are no bounds. There are no boundaries. There are no loyalties. You lie to get your money fix. He lied to get the money fix. They're money junkies. At once, of course, we should feel sorry for them and for their pathetic behavior. But on the other hand, as with any junkie, we have to beware because their behavior is dangerous. And that's what you have here. You have a criminal gang of money junkies. They're not dealing drugs. They're dealing credit swap defaults. They're dealing collateralized debt obligations and auction rate securities and a whole list of other names that we don't know what they mean because they don't either. They're only scams to get money from us.
Well, we also, Congressman Stearns and I, addressed the fact that in some cases, Treasury Secretary Paulson at the time was acting as a wrecking machine, as there would be some that would be sacrificed, such as Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers, and their failure as direct competitors to Goldman Sachs. The primary beneficiary of their failure was Goldman Sachs. But I want to get back to this issue.
But again, let's just stay on that a moment. It's the Bonanos versus the Gambinos. This is what people have to understand. This is no more than criminal activity. Of course they're going to wipe out the competition. And that's what I said. We're creating oligarchies. So rather than letting them fail so the system could self-correct itself, as capitalism is structured to do, no. They're in power now to put out the competition so they could become bigger and stronger, and you can see that's exactly what's happening.
You talked about these institutions acting as casinos to gamble, and I want to address that for just a minute because for 6 years I read from a speech that Greenspan gave in Belgium, and there wasn't any coverage of it, really, not by anybody, not by the Journal, the Wall Street Journal, not by anybody, but he talked about the fact that these banks were making these off-table bets in the form of derivatives, and at that time we were talking $110 trillion with a T, right? And of course we ended up getting over to, I think it was $1.25 quadrillion or something recently, but the fact that they would make these off-table bets, but if they would win, they would keep the winnings. But if they would lose, that the taxpayer systemically stood ready to bail them out. And he repeated 5 times in that speech, we stand ready to create money without limit. And people like me took that as a warning that the U.S. dollar could be destroyed by this type of intervention. And in the end, as you're saying, that wasn't really the case because it was the Bonanos against these guys. And so some firms were actually wiped out, so they weren't backed up in that derivatives game, were they, Gerald?
No one was. It's all a Ponzi scheme. And that's the other thing. We shouldn't call them Ponzi schemes anymore. Ponzi was the piker compared to Madoff, the finagler.
When you say, I want to go back to something you said earlier, you talk about when people have nothing left to lose, they lose it. We've seen the press and the media and the elite behind the media machine almost pleading with people to behave and to not revolt and to go and almost using phrases, right, like they should behave as their mothers taught them. I mean, it's getting to the extreme, but it doesn't seem to be working, Gerald. Is that what happens as you go through a cycle like this, that the media machine simply stops working to pacify the citizens?
Well, it stopped working a long time ago. It's these are the Michael Jackson promoters. What do they know? But again, we're not Monday morning quarterbacks on what we're talking about. Any of this, we had predicted everything that's going on. It's in writing. It's in our Trends Journal, in our books, etc. And we had forecast in 2007 that there would be massive tax protests erupting throughout the country, secessionist movements. We wrote about this years before it happened. It's happening now. Healthcare reform, many people don't even know the issues of it. It's built up anger. It's frustration. They know. They've seen the bonuses going to the Goldman gang and the other, the Bank of America bandits and the Citigroup crooks. They've seen where the money's going, and they're getting ripped off, and they're tired. It's like these phrases. I'm fed up, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's what's going on here. It has very little to do with health care reform. What the people know is that it's another government scheme, and they're going to come out on the short end of the stick.
Right.
So this is just another one of the camel straws. The Second American Revolution has begun. The first shot was fired on April 15th when people took to the streets and protested with tea parties and tax protests. And this mealy media, they made fun of the people, calling them right-wing nuts, and even used a sexual innuendo to degrade them about teabagging. And then on the 4th of July, when throngs of people nationwide again protested taxation without representation, they were ignored or ridiculed. And now, what we're seeing with the health care reform protests, people are now being once again denounced for standing up and saying that they're tired of this and they don't want to take it anymore. So we hear from President Obama saying that he's now criticizing the media because, quote, TV loves a ruckus. How cute. A ruckus. People of losing everything. And this song and dance man is calling it a ruckus. Before that, when the Tea Parties broke out, the White House at first denied ever knowing that they were going on. And then their Goebbels, or Axelrod, as they call them with the updated name, said, this could be unhealthy. It could devolve into something worse. Unhealthy? Unhealthy for people, taxation without representation? I have to tell you, Eric, this is no different than the French Revolution. And the noblemen that are really the money junkies who have more money than they know what to do with and don't care how they get more of it, they're in for a shock. You're going to see New York City and other major cities start turning into Mexico City. You're going to start seeing people kidnap rich people for ransom. There's no stopping this unless this course is reversed. And with the boys at the bank in control of the printing machines to keep feeding the addicts all the money fixes they need, it's doubtful there's going to be the kind of reversal that we need to save capitalism and save the country.
Let's talk about, I want to go back to the bankers for just a minute and this money and just try to pull this around in a different way, Gerald, because you said the money is not going to create jobs. We were promised that, but that's not happening. And then you talked about people losing it, and when that happens, they lose it. Does this, because the U.S., it seems to me, resembles a dying empire, an empire in decline, but something that's more disturbing, and you see this in empires in decline, is that the country is literally being looted. Is that the right description of what we're seeing right now? And is this happening with European tentacles as well as U.S. tentacles, this theft, this great theft that's happening?
That's an excellent observation that really passed me in thinking about this. And as you may or may not know, one of the stories we did it was the headline actually, in the fall issue of the 2002 Trends Journal was Empire America Fading Fast. And I'm a political atheist. I don't follow anybody's political religion. Like, I don't want to go into my history of, I worked in the New York State Senate as an assistant to the Secretary of the Senate. I've been around. I know what it looks like. I'm not a kid. So I don't believe in these fairy tale political religions. So having said that, in those days we were accused of being Bush bashers. You weren't allowed to call the idiot emperor an idiot. And now you're not allowed to call Obama a song and dance man or the leader of the presidential reality show. And I I call anything I want to call it. I see it as I see it. And being a political atheist, you're not concerned with ideologies. We're only concerned with facts. So having said that, what you're saying about looting the Treasury, yes, it's 100% accurate, and it's global. Money junkies are everywhere, in every nationality, in every country. It's an addiction. They can't help themselves. And this is what we're very concerned about. I said this on Fox News on Happy Hour on Thursday, August 13th, that what we're so concerned about is that when you look at the pattern, let's go back. Remember, we had a bailout in 2008. We had a bailout AIG and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we had to